Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for joining. This is your boy Q with the Black Four Horsemen podcast. And on this playlist, we are reviewing and reacting to Netflix's WWE Unreal Season 2, Episode 3. This episode was entitled The Vision. And in this episode, WWE and the show focused on basically three main characters, with Seth Rollins and the Vision being one character, which the title of the episode is based on. They also highlighted Penta and also Chelsea Green. So the show opens up with footage from this past WrestleMania, that would be WrestleMania 41, where Paul Heyman, if you remember the match, Paul Heyman was in the corner of CM Punk, and it was a triple threat match between CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins. And in that match, Paul Heyman not only turns on CM Punk, who he came to the ring with, but also turns his back on Roman Reigns and ultimately joins Seth Rollins. I remember this happening. I don't think anybody, there was some rumors that this may happen during the time, but I think it still caught a lot of people off guard when this happened. But Paul Heyman joining up with Seth would ultimately result in them forming the faction that we know of as the Vision. And they talk about the other parties, other people that's part of that faction later on in the show, and we'll get to that in a second. So after showing that footage and talking about the relationship with the relationship with Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman, they flipped to another superstar named Penta. They show a tour of, I'm assuming, his upbringing in his hometown, and talks about the lucha libre culture. Now, honestly, I would say I was not familiar with Penta until I saw him and his brother in AEW as the Lucha Bros, and that's when I started, kind of doing my research on who Penta was and some of the things involved with that. And they highlight this in the show. Penta is a great athlete. Again, he's a luchador, which a lot of luchadors tend to be very athletic, and they saw a superstar in Penta, and I totally agree with him. I think there was a quote in the show where Chelsea Green says that Penta could make a broomstick look good in the ring, and I agree with that. Um, they talked about how Penta mentioned about climbing that pyramid and working hard, and if you fail, trying again till you reach the top of that pyramid. And in his eyes and in his business, the top of that pyramid is WWE, and he accomplished that, and he gets involved in the Money in the Bank match that they talk about later on in the episode as well. But I do like that they highlighted Penta for people who may not be familiar with him, like myself, give me a little bit more background on him as a wrestler and as a character. Uh, they mentioned that Chelsea Green talked about how good Penta was. Uh, and I was actually not surprised, but kind of pleasantly surprised that they actually showed footage of a match that Chelsea Green had with Penta, years ago in Lucha Underground. They showed clips of that, and I ended up finding the full match on YouTube. I'll put that in the link, maybe in the show notes or whatever, description of this episode. So if you want to go back and watch that, you can. But it's about a 14, 15-minute match where Chelsea Green definitely shined in that match. She was going by a different name at the time. But it showed how good not only Chelsea really is, but also how good Penta is. So at the time when they talked about Chelsea Green, she was the current women's United States title, and they talked a lot about her. They showed her losing that title to Zelina Vega and everything, kind of that led up to that decision. But Bruce Pritchard mentioned in the show that you can put Chelsea Green in any role and she would shine. And I totally agree with that, because I've heard interviews with Chelsea in the past where she talks about she doesn't mind losing. Her job is to go out there and put on a great match, highlight whoever she's in there in the ring with. And I think she even quoted and said she would love to be the female version of The Miz. When you think about The Miz has had his moments. He's a former WWE champion, but he's has his lows too. But he's one thing about The Miz, and I've said this just from in different settings, that The Miz is the perfect WWE superstar, which means that he can wrestle in the ring, he can entertain, but he can also be that superstar that can go on Jimmy Kimmel or can go on these talk shows representing the company and representing wrestling in a positive light. So, I mean, I love The Miz. I think he's very underrated, but he capitalizes on every moment that he has, and that's why he is still on TV. He's still a current superstar. He's still a household name because of those sacrifices that he makes. He may not be the champion, but you're always going to see him on TV doing something. So for Chelsea to say she wants to be the female version of that, I totally agree. That's great on her, and I think even in that particular role, she can be in WWE for years to come. She will be that household name that everyone knows, whether you like her or dislike her. She'll be that she's making a name for herself. That's why I saw a lot of people were kind of pissed off online and on the internet about what Michael P.S. Hayes said in the show, that something to effect where Chelsea Green is not a Charlotte Flair, she's not a Tiffany Stratton, she's there to make other people look good. Um, Again, Michael P.S. Hayes kind of maybe set in his own ways. Unlike Charlotte and some of those other people she mentioned, Chelsea, what you got paid her way. She earned her dues and paid her dues in the independent scene, and she kind of came up the hard way, going in and sacrificing and wrestling in front of 30, 40 people for, like I always say, for $5 and a hot dog, until she's able to get up to where WWE recognized her and brought her in. And she's had multiple tryouts with WWE in the past and didn't get hired, and she finally did. And now she's taking the ball and she's running with it the best she can. So, to a point where she was the first inaugural women's United States champion, and they can never take that away from her. She was the first. So while they was focused on Chelsea Green, they showed the writers' room and showed that they're going to have her lose to Zelina Vega. Now, if you think back to that feud when it first happened, the crowd was very much behind Zelina. Yeah, they love Chelsea and they appreciate her. I think I remember the crowd chanting and rooting very much for Chelsea to win that first United States championship, be that first women's United States championship. She won that tournament. But the crowd was really behind Zelina, and they decided to flip the belt and have Zelina win that match. And Chelsea talked about how when they asked her, "You lose," she was just like, "Okay." She didn't argue. And, she was probably deep down probably was upset, but she didn't voice that upset that she was upset. Did not let that hurt her. But she went out and she did business and she did what she needed to do. And Zelina Vega was the new champion. They do talk about her getting a rematch for that United States title. I want to say at Money in the Bank, because they did kind of focus on two major PLEs during this episode. One was Money in the Bank, and then also with the past WrestleMania that they focused on in the beginning of the show. So they set up the match for her to lose the belt to Zelina, and there was some talk in the writers' room about, well, if you put the belt back onto Chelsea Green, who does she wrestle next? They talked about the baby faces on the roster. Triple H mentioned Michin. She mentioned B-Fab. Mentioned Zelina. So it's like, I guess his vision was, if you put the belt back on her, then she's basically facing those same opponents over and over again, which is not Chelsea's problem. That is a character development, a superstar problem that Triple H and whoever's it has to fix. I think that, again, this was filmed earlier last year, 2025. They've addressed some of those by bringing up some new people from NXT. I know Jordan Grace is currently on SmackDown now, where that title reigns. That title had. I know they brought Last Legend in, but she's involved in the tag team right now with Nia Jax. But you got other people that the mid card title, other people that can go after that mid card title. Not only just on the women's side, but on the men's side as well, with bringing in people like Trick Williams, who they've kind of pushed all the way up to the main title, but we'll see how long that lasts. I love Trick, and I hope he does stay in that main title part of the show. But back to Chelsea Green. They showed the rematch against Zelina, and where Zelina, no fault of her own, it was an accident, kicks her doing this, trying attempting to do the 619 and broke her nose. And Chelsea mentioned about that's probably like the sixth or seventh broken nose that she's had. But those are the sacrifices that she made in this business. So, but that was kind of how they wrapped up the Chelsea Green story. They talked about they showed her uh, on site where again her new home was being built and talked about some of her real life stuff. So I appreciate them putting that in the show. But that's kind of how they wrapped it with Chelsea. They focused back onto Penta and how he, you know, his debut in the Money in the Bank match, which is what this this episode did kind of focus on that Money in the Bank match and everything that happened with it. Penta being involved in the ladder match and getting his shine in, and everybody appreciating his work that he did on that. But the main topic of this episode was based on how they formed the Vision, which is what the title of the episode is. So at Mania, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, Paul Heyman turned on CM Punk and Roman Reigns, sided with Seth. The next day on Raw, they're in the ring. Seth is talking up with Heyman. Roman Reigns comes out. He comes out, spears Seth, and then goes after Paul Heyman. And what I do like about this show too is you see some of the backstage stuff from in Gorilla, and they showed where Triple H mentioned to Braun Breaker that he was going to be the one to take out Roman Reigns. He's going to be part of this vision, of this faction, and I love that because I think we sometimes don't realize that a lot of these superstars may not know what they're doing the next day, literally until the day of, or maybe an hour before that. In this case, it was the day before. Triple H asked, "Hey Braun, hey, you know what you're doing? Braun Breaker, you know what you're doing tomorrow?" He was like, "No." He's like, "Roman's gonna come out to try to spear Heyman, and you're gonna get stuck by you." And you can see his natural reaction, like, "No, for real." So that was just Triple H telling him that, okay, it's time for you to step up to be in a bigger role, be a part of this. So we all know what happened. He came out, he speared Roman, beat down Roman, pulled off the black hoodie, which they love using now for everybody that's a surprise. Joins up with Seth. So now you have two members of the Vision. I don't remember when they brought in the third person. I don't know if it was the next week on Raw or not, but they brought in Bronson Reed, Big Bronson Reed. So they talked about him and Braun Breaker being like the future superstars, being aside with Seth. So the original, I guess they've added a couple more people since then, currently, as of January 2026. But at that time, it was three members of the Vision, not counting Paul Heyman: Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed. So this all sets up with now Seth has a group around him, and he's involved in this Money in the Bank match. This all results in the PLE Money in the Bank, where they go out and do the match. Superstars taking the bumps on the ladder match. They Seth gets down and he calls in the rest of the Vision, Breaker and Bronson Reed, help clean house. One thing about these ladder matches, there are no disqualifications. So the Vision took out everybody to help Seth set up for the win, set up to get that briefcase. That's another thing they kind of showed backstage, where they're planning out this match, and they even mentioned that Money in the Bank, because of all the elements and everything involved, is very hard to set up. And they wanted to set up. They knew Seth was winning. They made the decision, but they wanted to set up some more drama by having LA Knight and Seth Rollins on top of the ladder, fighting over the briefcase, back and forth. They wanted LA Knight to knock Seth off. So now the crowd thinks, oh no, LA Knight is going to win this. But and then have Seth comes up, knock him down, ultimately get it. Just builds up the drama. Well, I would understand in all of the confusion going on in the match, certain spots are missed, I'm sure. Certain spots are not timed properly, or you may get out there, you may forget. The producers can lay out the match perfectly, but it's still up to the superstars to execute that. And sometimes they miss. And at this point, ultimately they want to set the win. It does happen. But the whole drama with him and LA Knight did not happen because but different things. I don't know if LA Knight forgot or he just wasn't, or wasn't in a position to get there. But I saw they showed his face here, and I saw this a lot online again before I saw the episode. And granted, this is the face of a man that knew he screwed up. Um, he was supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, and he wasn't. And and again, he could have been. He got knocked out of the ring. The episode showed he was actually outside the ring, trying to fight to get back up there. Maybe he just forgot and came up on the wrong side of the ladder because he ends up pulling Seth down. They fight again, boom, boom, boom. Seth ends up curb stopping him and then climbs up to get it. So they missed the moment on the actual ladder to build up that drama. But ultimately, Seth won. That was the plan. He is now the Money in the Bank winner. He now holds it. He now goes into, which I believe they do show a little bit of the next pay-per-view, which I think was Night of Champions, with an attempt to cash in on CM Punk, who was a champion at the time, I believe. Yeah, and it was failed by this. No, sorry, John Cena was the champion. So this was Cena defending his title against CM Punk at Night of Champions. This is during Cena's heel turn and heel run, and it's also where, if you remember, during this PLE is when John Cena, Charles Robinson, the referee, is running down to attempt to be the referee for Seth's cash in, and John Cena basically knocks him down, tackles him as he comes out of the ring, preventing that from happening. And John Cena is able to escape with the championship. So that was kind of how the episode ended. It did show a little preview of episode 4, which shows the CM Punk and LA Knight match where CM Punk gets hurt. So I'll be watching that, if not later tonight, probably tomorrow sometime. But yeah, that's how the episode ended. Overall, I think I knew a lot of what was going on even with this. It was cool to see how they formed the vision, because we now see the current vision. I think they added 2 more members since then. But how they formed that faction, their idea of the faction, why it was needed to kind of pull up these future superstars and help them kind of elevate their character into the future. Because again, you have superstars on their roster that are older now, so you need to bring in some young blood and some new blood in there. So, but yeah, that was how the episode ended. I appreciate all y'all for tuning in. As I said before, like, subscribe to this, let everybody know it. I plan on dropping episode 4 tomorrow. It is a snow day here. I'm currently in Memphis, Tennessee, so I'm kind of snowed in. So try to knock out episode 4 and 5 in the next day or two and bring the videos for there. So in the meantime, I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all, and I'm out.